I'm going to try and not turn this into a rant video, but I can't promise anything. So I get quite a lot of comments coming through my channel at times. And a lot of the time, it's the same sort of names that keep cropping up. You know, a lot of you guys are subscribers and watch a lot of my videos. Good on you. And some of you are newcomers to the channel and, you know, you've only seen a couple of my videos, in which case, welcome. But in amongst all these comments, you generally find there's kind of two different camps of people. Those who are gear focused and those who aren't. Now, quite a lot of my videos are gear focused videos. And a couple of times I've seen people comment and going, why are you always making videos focused on gear? Why don't you make videos focused more towards photography techniques? And the simple answer is, I do. You know, if you go onto my channel and look through all of my videos, you will see I have done videos on gear and I have done videos on photography techniques. And the videos that I do on techniques never get anywhere near as many views as the videos on gear do. So it's kind of obvious that people use YouTube more for looking for videos about gear than about techniques. And then that leads on to the famous comment that I always read everywhere and is why I am making this video today. And that is the comment, gear doesn't matter. Of course, gear matters. But before you jump on your keyboards throwing abuse down my neck, hold your horses, okay? Because I am actually sitting in a middle ground between the gear and the techniques. Gear matters, provided you can get the potential from it. And you can only get the potential from it by knowing the techniques. Now, if gear really didn't matter, then none of the professional photographers would be using any of the equipment that they've currently got, okay? They would all be using cameras from 10, 15 years ago, but they're not. I have said this before and I will say it again, okay? Better camera equipment does not make you a better photographer, but it does allow good photographers to get potentially better photos. But whether the gear matters is going to depend on what you are using it for, okay? If you have an idea in your mind as to a photo that you want to get and you know exactly how to get it, but the camera physically just cannot get that result that you're looking for, then the gear is holding you back and you need to get better gear. If you have an idea in your mind of a photograph but you don't know how to go about doing it, then it's not the gear that's holding you back, it's you, and you need to focus on the techniques and learn how to get the photo you're looking for. If you learn the techniques and then still can't get the image, then yeah, maybe it's the gear that's holding you back. But sometimes gear is completely irrelevant. Case in point, a couple of weeks ago, I was doing some studio work on a freelance basis for a photography company. They were doing like university graduations, those sorts of things. So they had many different photographers there, all with their own studio set up, and they just had all the graduates come in, get the picture taken, and then leave. Now, they did have guidelines in place as to what their minimum expectation of the equipment that you bought was. So, you know, they wanted decent quality lights and they didn't just want people to have, you know, an entry-level camera with an 18 to 55 kit lens, that sort of thing. And they did calibrate all of the studios so that, you know, the lights were set up in the same sort of way, that they were working on the same power levels and those sorts of things. So they wanted all of the studios to be creating as close to their trademark look as possible. You know, and all the photographers there were using completely different cameras. You know, I think one of them was using a Nikon D3S, one was using a Nikon D750, somebody was using a Canon 6D, somebody was using a 5D Mark II. There was all these really good high-end quality cameras that produce awesome results, and I turn up with a Canon 60D and produce exactly the same looking photographs. Now, before anybody asks, there's a couple of reasons why I picked this over taking my Sony. Firstly, the company had their own software that you needed to tether with, and their computers don't currently have any software that supports Sony. So the stipulation was it had to be either a Canon or a Nikon camera. Secondly, I knew the stipulations as to what they were shooting anyway. They were shooting people standing still in front of a backdrop in good light at ISO 200, shot in JPEG anyway. So in that situation, it made absolutely no difference as to whether I turned up with a 10-year-old crop sensor camera or a brand new full frame camera, because the image that I produced would have still looked exactly the same. You know, we were taking shots at f8 of people standing still. It's not like you needed a flagship autofocus system to manage that. We were taking single shots at a time anyway, so it's not like you needed a huge drive speed. You weren't bumping the ISO up, so it's not like you needed a really good performing sensor. So in that situation, I took a piece of equipment that got the job done, and I didn't want to put unnecessary wear and tear onto my main daily camera. You know, but if I was going out shooting sports or wildlife, or I was trying to do night sky astro shots, this camera wouldn't hold a candle up to what the A7 III can manage. So no, in some situations, gear doesn't matter, but that's not to say that gear never matters at all. You know, technology is only going to progress forward. So shooting speeds are only going to get faster, resolutions will only get higher, noise performance will only get better and better and better. But that is only any use if you are shooting stuff that is going to capitalize on those benefits. For studio photographers working under artificial light, you couldn't give a rat's arse about ISO performance because you're not pushing the ISO. But night sky photographers, wedding photographers, sports and wildlife photographers who do shoot outdoors and need to bump that ISO up at times, then that becomes a big deal. Dynamic range is another fantastic one, okay? A couple of years ago, before the Canon 5D Mark IV came out, and everybody was comparing up the 5D Mark III to the likes of the D750 and the A7R II. And one of the big differences was the dynamic range of the Nikon and the Sony versus Canon. And there was so many people going, oh, well, why do you care about dynamic range? You don't need it. The Canon's good enough for what you need. Not necessarily, because I always found with the 5D Mark III, you try and recover the shadows and they just go really noisy. And that was a trait of the 5D Mark III. So the solution to that was expose to the right, was to overexpose your image and bring it back rather than kind of shoot normal and push it up. But if you were trying to take a very high contrast photo, you would wind up blowing out your highlights, which obviously you didn't want. So the solution then was to shoot bracketed. You would take 3 pictures of different exposures, merge them all together in post, and then you would have the best of both worlds. And that was great, you know, that did work for me for a long time, but it's still 3 photos worth of information that you're having to take. It's still more processing time having to merge them all together afterwards. And it means that you can't take a picture of anything that's moving because you wind up with ghosting. Whereas now, I have the bracketed feature on the Sony A7 III, and I've not had to use it at all. But that's not to say that there aren't people out there who would still shoot bracketed shots. I've just not needed to with this camera as of yet. But that opens up more possibilities for me because I know I don't need to worry about shooting bracketed anymore. I can get the same sort of look in photos of moving subjects now that I could only get from static subjects with a 5D Mark III. And that brings me back to the original point, which is gear only matters if you are going to get the most out of it. If you are trying to take pictures now and you are not thinking, this camera is holding me back, this lens is not wide enough or fast enough for the photo look that I'm trying to get, then no, you do not need to worry about changing your camera equipment. If you're constantly taking pictures and thinking, oh, I would have got that shot if this thing was a little bit faster, or this picture would have really looked a lot better if it wasn't full of noise, then yeah, your camera is holding you back and maybe it's time to consider upgrading. So that's it for this video. Hopefully that wasn't too much of a rant, but what are your thoughts on the matter? Are you very gear focused? Are you very against gear? Leave your thoughts and comments in the box down below. Thank you so much for stopping by, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.